Call of the Night Arc/Season 1. Some people love it, some people hate it. Personally, I think Arc 1 is pretty solid as the introduction of a series, though I do think the anime adaptation is quite inferior with its presentation or overall execution. But hey, no matter the version, I'm still all in on this series' first 50 chapters in the show's 13 episodes. So today, we're diving into the highs and lows of Call of the Night Season 1. Is Season 1 really as great as I remember? Or does the main episode still deserve a place on the roast for a fine beef dinner? Let's find out. On the very last place, on number 13, we have Enlargen the Peeping Tom photos. Let's not beat around the tree here. The maid episode is bad. Episode 10 of Call of the Night sucks because of its setting. I mean, what else can you talk about it? It's a literal maid cafe and nothing to it. The plot doesn't align with anything about Call of the Night. It's not related to the night. It could happen at any time of the day, literally. It has no consistent themes with the series, and it just feels like something that could have been easily used for any other anime series at all. This is just nothing but fan services disguised as an episode. The ending does have a good message, but I can't seem to appreciate it because of the rest of the episode being nothing but fan service and just bad jokes. Speaking of which, this episode is just not funny. I only laughed at 3 jokes, 2 of them from Nazuna and 1 of them from Yamori. Overall, this episode is quite sluggish and there's not much to say. If you want an example on why I think this is bad, just try and watch the episode yourself. Believe me, it's pretty sluggish. Episode 8 is definitely the most simplest and bare-bones episode of Call of the Night yet. It doesn't really have a focused plot. The episode only has 3 themes: the time limit, a message about being yourself, and meeting Mahiru for the first time. If you ask me, nothing really happens in terms of contributing to the plot, aside from the said time limit and Mahiru plot points. The plot between Nazuna and Yamori going on a date and the message being be yourself and don't follow just simple rules is quite too simple for a series like this, especially since its previous episodes went on much deeper messages with much more deeper meaning. The episode overall worked better in the manga version since it was split into multiple chapters, so each chapter felt like it had its own plot, and not all of them being connected at once. One thing I also want to mention is the fact that on the last few minutes of the episode, the setting is completely different to the manga version. In the manga version, chapter 25 takes place in a festival, while in the anime version, it takes place in a regular location. This is probably because of budget concerns, considering that the show is very visually appealing in its own right, but still, changing up the entire location of the last few minutes does make me raise my eyebrows on the changes they might do for Season 2 onwards. On the number 11 spot, we have episode 13, Call of the Night. Yes, the episode is literally called Call of the Night, in the series called Call of the Night. It's a fine enough plot, with Hatsuka interacting with Yamori about his future, and Nazuna telling his friends that he wants Ko to live after the events of episode 12 and 11. I'm noticing a lack of humor in this episode. I don't seem to remember any real laugh out loud moments even after rewatching it for some time. It has a kind of sweet and dramatic tone, with scenes of characters yelling at each other, cussing, threatening to kill each other, all the while they ask themselves questions about what they think about each other. It definitely has its focus, and it is a pretty well built story, but there's not much to talk about. It's pretty much just a few conversations back to back. Now, about the ending. I know that a lot of people have been disappointed because of this ending, because it would have been much better if Season 1 ended on chapter 56 if it had more episodes. But to me, this ending solution seems like the decent enough option. It's not perfect, but ending it on the note of Nazuna and Yamori trying to do better in their relationship is quite okay. Oh boy, this episode. This is the episode that introduced the sidecast of Call of the Night, and if you know me, I do not like the sidecast that much. This would have been better as an introduction episode for those characters and what they're like, rather than just throwing them right in the middle of a plot. Seriously, I'm really not that big fan of these characters. They're pretty two-dimensional and only serve one purpose. I do like them later on in the series, but in terms of Season 1 and Arc 1, especially in the anime version, They're very bland and just downright annoying. Speaking of the plot, it's quite frustrating in terms of hindsight. It could have been much better if Yamari just wanted to say what he needed to, instead of just delaying what he wanted to say, all in the terms of dramatic tones. The episode overall felt like it suffered from the restriction of the 22-minute run mark. If it didn't, it would have been better if this episode was combined with All of Us, episode 8. The only reason why I did put this episode on number 10 instead of any lower is because of that really good looking fight scene. Come on, everybody likes that one. This is pretty much the first good episode of Call of the Night. The first half is quite okay. I like the Nazuna only scene, but I do kinda lose a bit of interest during the bath and the hotel scenes. Yeah, they're meaningful, but I don't think they're as memorable as usual. The second half, however, is quite good in my opinion. It shows to us that the dynamic between Nazuna and Yamari has definitely deepened since the first episode. And it's also really nice of how the story shows us more of a passionate side of Nazuna's character, portraying that she's quite responsible and intellectual with her ability and knowledge on modifying blood for consumption, and for understanding the human body and emotion, which, you know, is quite cool to know for a silly character like her. I don't remember this episode being exactly funny, but it is an enjoyable watch if you're looking for a more wholesome episode. Dude, this episode is such a classic in Call of the Night, but the anime version is not quite as good. Why so? First, I want to talk about how funny this episode is. So many great moments, the transceiver story, the cell phones, the playing around, etc. I love this episode's humor. Second, I really like the visuals and monologue scenes in this episode in particular. I especially love the scene where it played quiet music while Yamari was searching for Nazuna. Finally, I really thought this episode was great as an introduction to Nazuna and Yamari's dynamic. If episode 1 was the introduction of Nazuna, episode 2 is the beginning of their chemistry. Even though this episode is great in its own right, because of the way it was structured, it makes it feel like a short filler episode in case we're not focusing on the character development of the episode. And just overall, it worked better in the manga version, but compared to any other episode we had before, it's really good. This is another decent episode. Even though the beginning of the episode isn't all that great, and more so related to the events of the previous episode, I like this moment with Nazuna and Yamari because it indicates how much more complex the concept of love is, and how, obviously, kissing someone doesn't make you immediately fall for them. It's not a big focus, and it isn't all that of a world changer, but it's effective. As for the game playing scene, it just makes me realize how weirdly paced this episode really is. I think it's kinda cool they introduce a real video game for footage, and I especially love that Doki Doki parody, with how the whole scene is written and the game is structured. I'm definitely not a fan of how the episode is one big will he won't he scenario for Yamari having to quote unquote choose between Nazuna and Akira, making the audience think there's going to be some sort of love drama between them. Luckily, the episode's concept for that is nowhere near as bad in the execution thanks to how the jokes are delivered, and especially that ending. It's really sweet. We get to see Ko reveal what his goal is to Akira, and his intentions that he doesn't want to harm potential people around him because of it. It's quite nice to see a person like Akira, who can definitely get stern over Yamari and Nazuna's choices, accept Ko's dream and future goal, all the while encouraging him to do more besides that. There isn't much happening in this episode, and there's not much to talk about other than it just being quite funny, but I can still call this a good watch despite its pace and content variety. This is the episode introducing Akira, and the featured story of how Yamari actually had a friend who he completely forgot about because of his focus on his middle school popularity. One thing I do quite like about this episode is how Nazuna takes the situation of Yamari having a human female friend he never knew he had. She first seems suspicious about Yamari going early, then she finds it funny when she meets Akira, gets a bit annoyed at how Yamari doesn't want to be honest with her, and then accepts his decision afterwards when they meet in the ending. Even though we're still in the Arc 1 mean Nazuna era of her character, it's good to see her get some slight development very early on. I do think the visuals in this episode specifically stand out really well because of the moments like the beginning's early morning look, the bar, the park bench, and the ending. I also really like the Lost Time reprise. Despite being much better than episode 4, there's not much to say in this episode either because of its simple structure, but still, I think it's a memorable ride. Oh yes, the iconic episode 1. Probably one of my favorite TV show pilots ever. First of all, I love the beginning. It's so good to introduce Yamari as a character, his story, and the world of the series. Second, the pacing is so good. I love that they used the right amount of time for each and every scene, and I especially love the build-up between Nazuna's first appearance all the way to her first bite. Before she bit Yamari, the writer introduced her and wrote her in the way that we would later suspect on how she interacts with other strangers besides Yamari, and their interaction and talk after the first bite is so funny. It's no wonder why Nazuna became one of the most memorable anime characters since her popularity surged in 2022. I just really like how this episode establishes what the story is about, and how it will be portrayed, who are our two protagonists, what are their goals, and why exactly they're in a plot-related deal that pretty much starts this whole series. A lot of the jokes are surprisingly funny when taking the first few episodes into consideration. The visuals are beautiful, and of course, that ending is so mystical and wonderful to look at. Overall, it's a classic episode that starts off the story of a really memorable series. Oh boy, we're up to the 4 best episodes of Call of Night Season 1, so listen up, these ones are my favorites. Oh man, I love No Fair. It's a really great episode because of 2 things. 1. It explores an unrelated but still very thoughtful message for teenagers, and 2. It's about a secondary character, Sari. The story is about Yamari hanging out with Sari because he feels like she has a problem about something, possibly being connected to her obsession with popularity, which she deeply hyperfixates about as a vampiress. Sari explains that it's a great benefit for her race, but it's really tough to deal with the people she attracts, mentioning how, if things got too far, she should just kill them. One scene I definitely love that relates to this episode's theme is when Sari gets mad at Yamari for choosing an old and unpopular song during karaoke. It fits well with how thinking all about recency being superior isn't exactly the best mindset. The episode especially gets better once a guy who interacted with Sari, a guy named Aki, tries entering the room with Yamari and Sari. This leads to Sari telling Ko that her statement on killing people wasn't actually a joke, and rather something she obviously does. This leads to Yamari protecting the guy from getting killed, even to the point where Sari threatens that, if he doesn't move away, she'll kill him too. This scene raises up the stakes so well, reminds us of how Yamari, while naive, can be thoughtful and smart at times, and immediately makes us wonder how things will be tied up at the end. Speaking of which, this ending is so sweet. The reason why Sari kills people and is having problems with her popularity is that she is tired of always having to do the same task of turning others into her race, stating that she was hanging out with Aki as a chance to have an actual friend, only for him to be in love with her like anyone else she met, forcing her to kill him as well. However, when having to tell that to Aki, he says that because of seeing someone like her struggling to have a true friend, to the point of crying right in front of him, he decides it would be a good idea to become her boyfriend, instead of having to either kill him or leave him just for her to be safe. Now isn't that just cute? A guy who just came for the looks got to have a partner because he found something more significant in a girl who just happened to struggle because of her obsession with popularity. This is a really good message for teenagers, considering that this series' target audience are people from adolescence. The moral of the story being that relationships should be actually genuine because of liking between 2 people, and not just because of bragging rights or for benefit of one person. Sure, it may sound simple and cheesy, but considering what many teens are like nowadays, and the way this episode was executed, it makes it one of the greatest scenes in the entirety of Call of the Night. Overall, this episode is beautiful, with the visuals, with the interactions, with its message, and with its character moments. It makes my heart melt all the time. Episode 12 is the perfect way to follow up what episode 11 left on previously, with Yamari and his large concern and anxiety over what happened in the previous episode. What does it mean to be a vampire? Why does Ko want to become one? Is it even worth it? This episode is especially depressing with scenes like Mahiru angrily telling Ko to answer why he exactly wants to be a vampire, Nazuna telling him that her life is actually awful and that she was lying to Yamari about the wonders of the night, and the scene with Anko psychologically traumatizing Ko by telling him that, if he doesn't quit his dreams of becoming a vampire, she will literally kill him and everyone else from that race. Episode 12 is such a heartbreaking journey, and I love it for that. This is possibly the most Call of the Nightiest episode of the season. Literally. This episode features 2 plots, Yamari interacting with a woman who is struggling with working overtime, and Nazuna and Yamari having a feud at a pool party. First, I love the first half of the story with the lady and Yamori. This episode juxtaposes the mundane struggle of adult responsibilities with the whimsical, carefree nature of the night. Kiyosumi's frustrations with work and the pressure to conform to adult expectations, like having to work overtime or go to after-work drinks, perfectly mirror Yamori's desire to escape the rules of society and how he himself wants to stop going to school because of social issues. I also really like how that section ends, with Yamori explaining how, even though things might not be the brightest, he advises her to be hopeful that she can find a way to make things better. Second, that other half with the pool party is also really classic. This whole scene adds a layer of fun, but there's also an emotional subtext that gives it more weight. Nazuna teasing, especially when she flirts with other people to make Yamori jealous, contrasts sharply with Yamori's growing feelings of possessiveness. I really like this moment because, if you ask me, it's the first time in the series we see Ko care about Nazuna. It's the first of many moments that show off why these two are such a great duo. In the previous episodes, we had 3 examples of Yamori's commitment of being a vampire, one with dealing with Nazuna, and one of his curiosity about her as a person. But here, we get to see him literally drag her without consequence or regret, all because he was actually feeling emotions towards the sight of other guys trying to hit on her. This has probably the best visuals, some of the series' most funniest and interesting writing, and possibly one of the best moments of Nazuna and Yamori in the whole series. It ain't much, but it's honestly wonderful. Episode 11 is the best Season 1 episode of Call the Night, and one of the best chapters of the entire series. To put it simply, it's the episode that changed Call of the Night forever. It changes the mood, makes us shocked on what is to happen next, and makes us question if the goal of our protagonist is actually something we want to root for. This is the episode that introduces Anko Uguisu, probably my favorite character of the series, all with a really amazingly written scene that conveys many different things and goes through a few different moments. Embarrassment, concern, curiosity, and sudden fear. Then, afterwards, it has a scene that captures the chill and fun vibe of Call the Night really well, with a more unique character team-out than we saw before. Only for this wonderfully charming moment to be bashed by the sudden creepiness and horror of the teacher vampire twist, with the lighting and music turning tense and dark, and the whole atmosphere feels like us and Yamori having to think fast in this horrifying and unexpected situation. All of this gets wonderfully tied up together with the reveal of Anko suddenly appearing again to kill the teacher vampire, revealing that she's a vampire hunter, knows exactly what Yamori is doing and what he's trying to do, and telling him that he should quit because he knows nothing about vampires compared to her. I love this story because of how unique to the series it is, how it's really different and experimental, yet so great at its core. It changes our perception of the setting and the goal of the series' plot, and it makes us reflect and look back on what exactly we were rooting for the protagonist. Do You Know What a Vampire Is the best episode of Call the Night Season 1, and I will forever consider it as one of the best episodes of any TV show ever. And that's my ranking of Call the Night Season 1. Whether you agree, disagree, or don't even know about the series, we all know Season 1 has its unique charm that makes it the most iconic, relaxing, and lighthearted arc of the series. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Until then, keep enjoying the night, and remember, stay away from big mosquitoes.